I see. Yeah, okay, now we're recording.
I'm working on a new one as we speak.
Is that Bambi or something?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is one of the backgrounds from Bambi. This was like right when like Zoom and like stuff was new. I went on like a rabbit hole of trying to find some interesting backgrounds, but it lasted about 10 minutes.
Well, hi everyone, welcome to book club. Today we are discussing a very significant work. It's called Salmon by Sebastian Castillo, our very own. Um,
Me
you didn't realize.
neither. Forgot.
So could you all write in the chat your name and what time it is and where you are? When we first started doing this book club, this whole thing where we meet on Sundays. At that time, I was in England, and so it was always 9 p.m. And then for like the past few years, I've been in France most of the time when we've been doing it, so it's been 10 p.m. And I think 9 p.m. is really good. We should get some UK people in. It's like the perfect time.
I
Um,
feel like we planned it because the 9 was good. And we're like, oh,
yeah.
10 is rough.
No, but I think it's mainly so that we can include everyone.
Oh, okay, sure.
But now looking back, I'm like, it does work. It did work out well for us. Um, so yeah. So raise your hand if you've read Salmon, or some or all of Salmon by Sebastian Castillo. Oh, that's perfect. I'm so glad. Um, raise your hand if you've read any other books by Sebastian Castillo. Oh wow, we've got some fans. Um, Booking, what books have you read by Sebastian Castillo?
I've read 49 Venezuelan novels and Not I.
Nice, you've got the complete works.
Wow, the whole oeuvre.
Done it all, yeah, the oeuvre.
Highly enough. Nice. Anyone else? Raise your hand if you've read the complete work. Well, the complete printed works of Sebastian Castillo. Just yeah. Okay. Nice. Well, that means that the few of you who haven't have got something to look forward to. Um. All right. So we'll do the usual thing, right? We'll put in the numbers of the page of what you want to talk
Should
about
we
or read.
do the
Oh, right. Yeah, definitely. I don't have mine with me, so I'm going to show my t-shirt.
Chris, do you want to do the honors?
I'm doing it, yeah. I did a
Okay.
few. Okay, beautiful. Everyone's beautiful.
Yay.
And
We
summary.
we accidentally came to England without a copy of Salmon.
Lucy,
So,
Lucy, I want to see the pig shirt again, please.
sorry, we saw it before you arrived. So,
It looks so great.
okay, here you go.
Oh, Alphonse in all his beauty.
I thought it would be like really sort of grotesque and like hideous to wear a t-shirt with a big pig on it, but actually it seems fine. No one really even seemed to like bat an eyelid. Um, so
This
yeah,
looks
like
punk.
yeah. So write in the chat if there's a page that you want to talk about or part that you want to read. Um, you when we did the reading with Caroline, we um basically got Caroline to read every part that was mentioned. But I don't know if Sebastian would be open to do that because he does not read his own work.
I can read parts. Yeah, if somebody wants me to read, it's okay.
Sebastian, maybe we should show the video.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me let me look it up. It's on YouTube.
Okay. Um, I don't know if you guys know, maybe you've heard about this, but when at Sebastian's book launch, he didn't want to read from the book. So, well, you can explain it better than I can.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially, I've always felt that reading fiction is very difficult, like to do it in a way that's convincing and that isn't boring, you know, especially from a novel. Writers so very often have to do the sort of acrobatics of like, oh, and then the narrator's here, but like keep this in mind, and then there's all this other stuff happening, and then they deliver this really like monotone reading of their work. And so what I thought I would do is I would hire a professional. So I went on Fiverr.com looking for professional actors, and I found a man in Michigan to read from my book, and so then I just screened the video of of him reading. Oh, you found it, great. And I think he did a great job. I mean, so when I say professional, I suppose I'm using that term a little generously, but you know, he really put himself into the work, and unfortunately, he mispronounced a number of words. But he would have charged me more to have him do it again, so I just kind of let him go for it. But yeah, so I guess should I share my screen? Is that the best way to do it? Okay, hold on one second. You know, actually, I think I don't know if I have that enabled, Lucy. It might be better if you did it from yours.
Okay, one moment, please. Oh, I need to share my sound too. So this is him.
This is Mark Crawford, 6'10", performing salmon.
I refused to tell my few friends and my relatives of my coming departure. I feared it would, through gossip and secrecy, return to my parents. If I had given them even a day to mull over these plans of mine, they would have threatened to lock me in my room. My parents did not commit themselves to such treasured professional pursuits. My father was a secretary, my mother a secretary, but they had nevertheless earned a decent life for themselves and lived comfortably. Part of my resolve emerged from the guilt I felt living off their retirement fund. The wine cellar paid poorly, and by the end of the week, I always needed for mother or father to open their purse and slip me coin. My father dedicated much of his time to taxidermy. He had always argued the problem with today's youth were not issues of work ethics or morals, but a lack of hobbies. He suggested that if the youth were to pay greater attention to their hobbies, whether that be the building of ships in a bottle, gardening, or sports betting, then their problems would vanish just as quickly. While I was devoted to my empirical studies and to my work as a poet, I obtained no such leisurely practices. A father did not consider verse a hobby proper. My mother spent much of her day reading romantic novels, novels where people who should not love each other due to some accident or other did, and for that reason a plot could be concocted at great length. Father deemed this an acceptable fashion to pass one's days. Perhaps it's due to this tacit harmony that they've been able to remain together for as long as they have. My mother is in her late 70s, my father even older. After the death of their sole daughter, I was adopted as a consolation prize for their grief and newfound misery. I was merely an infant then, so I do not recall the life of an orphan, though I have felt that shadow plague me throughout my life. At dinner that evening, I announced my plans. I wanted to prove to them that I was taking matters into my own hands, that after years of dejection and confusion, I was to be the author of my own life. I should not like to be written by someone else. As expected, they both thought I was invoking a bit of mirth at the table. But then, accepting with some trouble the reality of my coming departure, they asked, Who will take care of us? Though, yes, they are strong in spirit, their bodies grow frailer by the day. A strong gust could be enough to fell one of the two over. Thankfully, they did not go out of doors often. As it was, they had most of their requirements delivered to them. Their foodstuffs, their medicines, their slight pleasures, alcohol, pipe tobacco, the local rag. I was delivery boy of all of them. Moreover, my father said, "We shall be lonely. With whom shall we sup?" "I've arranged for your loneliness, Father. The neighborhood boy whom I've introduced after far-reaching deliberation will not only perform the standard delivery duties, but will join you for dinner as well. Father, he has a stamp collection." This latter bit was an outright lie, and as I had planned it, visibly quelled my father's unease. He drummed his knuckles on the tabletop. Yes, the image of stamps gathered in a pre-processing volume was visible through my father's very forehead. Mother was not as easily satisfied. "That boy smells of seawater, something seawater-like," she said. "We live inland, Mother. The only water about us is what comes from our taps and in the sewers below. You must be confusing him with one of those foolish characters in your novels." "He reeks of ocean," she shouted, and all three of us fell to silence. I would tell the boy to shower before visiting. To be true, I did not know where he lived, and he was often smeared with some kind of ash, particles of a mysterious nature. He was known as the local odd job, both for the services he provided around our city and for his bearing. He had but a single tooth in his mouth, and I heard by way of our local butcher that he used it deftly. My parents would be safe. Before falling asleep that evening, I heard a light rap on my bedroom door. It was Mother. "And what will you be doing there at this esoteric fish country?" she asked. Our dinner had ended curtly. First, with a dismal of my resolve, followed by a quiet acceptance of that which my parents had no power to change. "I will be teaching mathematics, Mother," I said, lying in bed, duvet covering me from toe to forehead, unable to feel sleep within my body, as was usually the case. She shut the door without saying good night.
Great job, Mark.
You can tell he was really moved by it as well in the end.
He said in his message that it reminded him of the Victorian novels of his youth. It actually, he wanted a copy of the book, and I forgot to mail it to him, so I'll have to do that. Yeah, selection process. The first guy I was going to go with, he's called like the man of 1,000 voices on Fiverr, and he just does like celebrity imitations. And I reached out to him, and he said that he no longer knew how to make his video editing software work, which was like a baffling thing. It's like that this is what your service is. And so then I went on to another guy, and he seemed really good, but he wanted $600 for a 5-minute video. And I was like, what, are you kidding me? like 5 minutes of work, $600. And so then he said, well, I know this guy, Mark. He's just starting out in this Fiverr acting game. You should hit him up. And Mark wanted, at first it was like 200. And I said, dude, that's too much money for 5 minutes of video. And so then I talked him down to 150. But I think it was money well spent.
So, what did you guys think of that section of the book? Tried to talk about the writing more than Mark Crawford, if you can.
I'm still just wondering where he got that eagle.
I mean,
Yeah,
he makes $200 every 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's
He just
pure
bought
gold.
it.
he asked me if I wanted any particular background, and I said, whatever, just do whatever you feel is best.
Well, I think it was good that we listened to that first, because that's kind of close to the beginning of the book. Did you guys? I guess I have a question is for everyone, which is like, you probably didn't really know what to expect from this book. Were you surprised?
I think I was only surprised when it shifted to a play, because I felt like I had read, what was it, the excerpt on Joyland, which I felt like gave a pretty good vibe for the first half of it, but no, I don't know, things were pretty weird on the boat. Never mind. Okay.
I was very surprised, but I think I had read one or two poems by you before, Sebastian. So and I did not know much about the book apart from that it's about this guy going to teach at some school or something. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to expect, that he's going to be teaching. I thought, oh, is this going to be some like inspired by his real life or something like that? I guess it is, yes. Very, very inspirational. Um, yeah, I was very surprised, and I can totally see what our man Mark said about this having like a 19th century vibe in the beginning. I felt so too. I actually took a note of that. I thought it was in my mind it was a mixture of a bit of Dickens, a bit of Kafka, and a lot of Rabelais. Gargantua and Pantagruel. I forced myself reading all of these, and also Dickens last year. So these felt kind of in a similar vein. But it also quite I like that I was reminded of many different things, but it also was very unique. So yeah, I was very surprised. I did not think I would have that many associations with other things. I was really I talked to my boyfriend today about how surprised I was by the book.
You know, it's funny. Somebody described it as Rabelesian, and I've actually never read him. But if I've already written something that is in the vein of him, I guess I don't have to read him.
And I think there's a lot of the stuff that you put in the liner notes that sort of tie back to Rabelais in a way, because it's stuff that he's somehow inspired. I'm a Rabelais truther. I am obsessed with him, and I I think there's like, I thought what was so fascinating was like the tone that you managed to develop for like, especially the first half. Like there's a voice that is so like measured. Like it feels really crafted, that like creating this like character and having like, because there was a lot of words that I didn't necessarily know, and I was like, wow, like I feel like it's the kind of word that I would encounter not in something that is so that is like 21st century, but also like there was a playfulness with it that was that kind of pushed it further and made it seem like, not, I wouldn't say smart, because I think it would be kind of pejorative. Like it made it feel like really interesting, and I loved like seeing kind of the cogs in the wheel work to like make this character and like make his voice super I don't know, like super distinctive, and like you see immediately what you're dealing with. Like from the first sentence, like, oh yeah, this is this type of character, but it's not like, not in a kind of definitive way that would make it boring. It's like, oh, I can't wait to see what he's going to get into.
Yeah, with regards to the vocabulary choices, leading up to the writing of the book and while I was writing the first half, whenever I read something from the 19th century or early 20th century, especially books that were like a little bit more lyrical, I would write down any word that was really unfamiliar to me, as like a material that I knew that I would, want to use. Like, so there's one word at a certain point toward the beginning. It's horripilating, I think, which I had never encountered in my life other than when I read Under the Volcano by Malcolm Lowry. And I found out it's like to making your hair rise. It's a very kind of antiquated word. And so, yeah, it was interesting kind of like collaging the voice. And one of those things was including kind of archaic language. Of course, it was also like a what do you call it? Like a technical block in that, like, I didn't want it to be too off-putting. If it was too much, it would be a little off-putting. So yeah, the hair-raising word, horripilating. Let me write it down. It's so obscure that Word doesn't recognize it. It comes up as a misspelling. But yeah, thank you for saying that, Victor.
Well, I was also really surprised, but it felt like, yes, it also reminded me of like 19th century stuff I've read before, but like the 8-bit version of it, it just felt very video game-like to me. Even the second part, there was like written as a play. I felt like I was just following this map and pressing A the whole time and seeing what would happen next. I don't know how to explain. I don't know how you did that, but that's what it felt like to me.
It's funny that you say that because it absolutely like did have that. That was something that I wanted to do. I wanted it to have a kind of video game like feel. And in terms of how, I guess a part of it is maybe that it's sort of very fast paced. Like every chapter, every scene, like I tried to make it so that something new happened. Either a new character is introduced. I think almost in every chapter, and then sort of quickly disappears. But that was something that was also one of the ways I was influenced by Alice Notley's Descent of Valette, is that I remember when we read it together here, I think it might have been Caroline who said that she thought that book had something video game-like about it. And some of it has to do with the fantastical and surreal images, but I think the main thing is that she's sort of like constantly traveling through to this endpoint, and at that endpoint is the tyrant, who is like the big boss at the end of at the end of the game. Which if you've read through the book, Leather is sort of kind of like that. So yeah, I'm glad that that's something that you picked up on, because it was definitely intentional.
Yeah, I was thinking about the video gaming aspect of the book as well. Like the first half feels very much like a LucasArts adventure game where all the puzzles are very obscure and the pieces don't really fit together. And then it felt like halfway, and there's like an early line about kind of the space between his home and work feeling like a loading screen, like between the distinct portions of his life. But then halfway through the book, when you move into the second half, it felt like just kind of like a massive glitch in the game where everything is unsolvable now, but the characters still try to kind of carry on and figure out what the solution to this game is now, even though it's completely broken. So yeah, that kind of felt like the through line to me as well.
That's a lovely metaphor. I hadn't thought about it like that before. That the second half is kind of like a glitch. Yeah, somebody, I think Carmen asked about the formal constraints, and I'm glad you asked, because I don't think anybody previously has asked me about it. But in the first half of the book, the structure is in the first chapter. I'm going to have a little visual aid here too. In the first chapter, it's just the narrator speaking directly to the reader. So there's one person. In the second chapter, it's the narrator and he speaks to one other person. In the third chapter, it's the narrator and he speaks to 2 other people. In the fourth chapter, it's the narrator and he speaks to 3 other people. The fifth chapter repeats the structure. So it's just the narrator. Then right after that, it's one person, then 2 people, and then so on until you get to the island. And so the effect is like ocean waves cresting against an island. The reason why I also wanted to do this is that the narrator's big emotional problem is that he can't sort of deal with everyday life, and he sort of can only envision a future where there's something really grand that's sort of bestowed upon him because he thinks of himself as a sort of like special person. And it seemed to me that like what's the most emblematic thing of everyday life? It's speaking to other people. And so yeah, that was essentially the constraint. And on the island, every one of those play-like scenes has a total of 4 characters in every scene. Main character syndrome, yeah.
Does anybody have any favorite characters?
Probably the pig.
I feel like the one thing is really successful in my opinion is that like there's all these different characters and they all have really even when they don't appear for very long. Even when characters like just come in for like one scene or something, they all have like really distinct voices. Like the Yonkers or I don't know, like basically everybody, you're just like you don't really know who they are because everything's a bit like bizarre as it happens, but they just like sort of appear distinct from the first time that they speak. Um, I don't know, was that which is necessary because everything happens so fast. I think like for me, because I've read this book so many times, I sort like you sort of lose sight of how it would appear to other people. But I remember at one point when I read it again, in the sort of later stages of like publishing, and I hadn't looked at it for a while, I was like, God, like how does all of this stuff happen within like 50 or 100 pages like at the beginning? It's just like I've only just started reading this again and we're already like we've gone through all of these different like circumstances and like insane sort of situations. But yeah, I felt like that. So it's like you need every character to just sort of appear like with a certain way of talking. Was that fun to do?
Yeah, and I would say it was as fun to give them names, like Disgraced Wizard and Metallurgist Lacking Fluid. I knew that they all couldn't be whimsical, so some of them had very sort of, I guess, utilitarian names, right? Like driver or grocer or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of a challenge, I suppose, because I knew that for the most part, as soon as the character would appear, they would sort of be whisked away just as quickly. And so they needed to be marked by something that was particular to them, whether it was their manner of speech or what they do, or, yeah. So yeah, it was, and for that reason, I when I first wrote it, I didn't have like on the first page, there's the what do you call it? Dramatis personae. I don't know how to pronounce it. Which you usually see in plays. I didn't have that, but I thought, well, there's so many characters, I might as well, sort of introduce them at the front.
And I thought having that at the beginning of the book was really great because I would go back to it so many times because I was like, oh, how far am I in the book? Like, who else is going to show up? And like, I read the list before I started reading the book, and I was like, oh, that's not like it's the kind of like excitement that you get from like you're about to read a play and you try to figure out, like, you're preparing psychologically to remember all the characters. And so I paid really close attention to that list, and I was like, grandfather eating soup, hell yeah. Like just these stuff, like characters, like, oh, it's exciting to see that all these people are gonna show up and like what are they gonna do.
That's why I never thought of it as essentially like a progress bar for the book, but I suppose it is. And the reason, by the way, that Alphonse is last is because they show up in order of when they speak. So even though he shows up earlier in the book, he doesn't say anything, or maybe that's not him, who's to say, in that kind of psychedelic chapter.
When did you decide to put in yourself or a character named Sebastian? And because Sebastian kind of becomes almost the secondary protagonist in the back half of the book. What were your kind of thoughts with that?
Well, I remember years and years ago, coming across a list of writing advice from W.G. Sebold, the German writer who was a creative writing teacher at the University of East Anglia for, I think, like 20 years. And one of his students compiled all these things. And one of the things that he said, if you ever want to make a story stranger, just add a doppelganger. It's like the quickest way to make a story strange. And so I wanted to use that before even, before I even knew who the character was going to be or whatever. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun? Because I thought that people would have perhaps the assumption that sometimes readers do this, where you assume that the narrator is a stand-in for the writer. And so I thought, well, what if I introduce a character who happens to share my name? That would kind of throw that assumption off balance. And so that's sort of some of the things that I was thinking about. The other thing, and this is a sort of like a retrospective, I wasn't thinking about this as I was writing, but you know that meme of the two guys on the bus and one is happy and the other one is like sad. It's basically that kind of relationship. I think the narrator just really can't handle anything, and the Sebastian character is like, even when he arrives on the island, he's like, well, I guess I'm here, gotta guard the corpse of the founder. That's what they were asking of me. And so yeah, that's that dynamic that essentially develops between the two of them.
The best version of this meme that I've ever seen is one where both of them think nothing really matters.
Yeah.
And I think this fits quite well to your book.
I'd say so too.
But it's funny how that doppelganger character sort of seems to just start constantly drinking when he's on the island, and every time anyone sees him, he's just like physically deteriorated further or like become more islandish or whatever. Like what? I guess he's just like he's more adaptable, but he seems also to sort of, I don't know, be collapsing because of that or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the features of I wanted drunkenness to be one of the features of the island, just because that as a kind of tapestry felt really, I don't know, amusing, like an island where everyone is sort of perpetually drunk. And so of course there's a logistical problem of, if this place is so remote, how do they have an endless supply of alcohol? And so that's where some of the kind of magical or surreal components come in. And so, to kind of further go into that component of his character where he just sort of rolls with the punches, it seemed natural that he'd be like, well, I guess I just have to be drunk all the time while I'm here. So that was part of the reason why I decided to do that for the Sebastian character.
Probably my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts in the book, is when Sebastian and the poet hide in the wine barrel thing. Like that's really, I found that so funny because it really, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that seems like surreal or sort of absurd before that, but then that just really seems quite completely impossible, I guess. And you're just like, what? What? But it's also like just hilarious. And I really love the illustration that Kit did as well, with the wine bottle sort of pouring into the sea. Yeah, I enjoy all the wine content.
Yeah, I have to say that Kit did an amazing job. I asked him, because he had already read the book, and he said, would you be interested in providing like one or two drawings? And he said, yeah. And then he said, what do you want me to draw? And I said, whatever you feel like drawing. And then within a week, he like gave me like 16 illustrations. So like, wow, this is way more than I thought you would provide. And they all came out wonderful. I mean, I think we used almost all of them. Yeah, the long nipple one I think is really inspired in particular. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for him for the interior illustrations and the cover too, which was totally his idea.
And I'm also like really happy with how that worked out, because that was kind of always the like Shabby Doll House thing, was like that we published poetry or write or stories or whatever, and then they had like accompanying artwork. And like when we first did books, I didn't really, I just didn't, I felt like it was already too much like to learn how to do. And I was like just kind of like, oh, that seems like too impossible. But then for these for this and for the Moan Wilds that we got to put artwork in. I was like, this is amazing, and we should definitely always do that in the future. And it also like creates this really cool like bond, I think, like because both of you and Caroline like asked people who you're like friends with and who wouldn't otherwise have been as involved in the project. I think it's like definitely always got to do that going forward.
I just got a kind of wild idea if you want to entertain me.
Yeah.
Maybe we should read one of the play chapters and we assign different people to different characters.
Yeah, we should. Do you think we should go straight to the second part of the book, or should we? Is there anything people want to say about the first half before that? Yeah.
I have a question. By the end of that section, were you tired of writing in that voice, or could you have gone on? And are there words that you wrote down that you didn't get to use?
Yeah, so after I knew that the book would be divided in two parts, and that the second part would take place on the island, and I wrote it in a kind of linear chronological fashion. But, I started with chapter 1 and then chapter 2. And I knew that I wanted the second section to be formally distinct, and I just didn't know how or what. At first, I thought maybe I'll write it in the third person, and the reason is that I wanted to emphasize that this is sort of a different place now from a different perspective, and I wanted to give the effect of the sort of rug being pulled out from underneath you, because the first half is sort of this kind of confessional mode, like it sounds like you're reading somebody's diary or something, and then all of a sudden the main character is seen from above, which is improbable or illogical. Like how could both of those perspectives exist within the same document? And then kind of serendipitously, I read two books. One is a Raymond Queneau book and another is a Fleur Jaeggy book, and both of them are novels that use the kind of, I guess I'll call the architecture of drama in the novel. And I said, that's it. I knew that I tried it at first, and if it was a failure, then I was just going to scrap it and just go back to what I was doing. But by the time I was maybe halfway through the second scene, I knew that okay, this works. And I knew to a certain degree as well that it was a risk, because if you liked aesthetically or formally the first half, and then all of a sudden you're reading almost a completely different book, that might be kind of off-putting, but it's a risk I wanted to take. And yeah, and so in terms of your other question, I on my phone I wrote all of the words that I wanted to use, and there's a few. Yeah, celerity. I couldn't tell you what it means. I just read it in a book and I looked it up. There you go. Cuirassier. I don't know what that is either.
I think that's a kind of sword fighter.
Sword.
Fighting with the cuirass.
Okay, sword. And there was one more I think I didn't use. I can't find it now, but yeah, it was one of those things where I really tried to go through all of them, but obviously, I didn't want to force them in if they were going to be awkward. So thank you for asking that. I appreciate it.
No, that's great. I was wondering.
The thing I really like about the transition from the first part to the second part is during the first part, you're kind of undermining the usual narrative of like traveling to this beautiful place and going on this adventure to find yourself, like he's in the train and looking out the window, but it's just extremely bleak and awful to look outside. And then when you end up in the second part, like not only does he never get to salmon, but the way the voice changes in the second part, you kind of literally end up nowhere, just with these disembodied voices speaking to each other. So you just kind of end up in this void rather than any other place. And I don't know, I kind of liked that, connected with that part of it.
It's kind of like in this book club.
Yeah, I guess I wanted there to be one of the bigger ironies of the book is that he's invested so much in traveling to this place that he thinks is important and exalted, even though the truth is he doesn't even know anything about it. And then it leads to him, as you put it, landing in a kind of no place, right? Like it's like a black hole, you know, almost. And so, yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that.
Oh, sorry, you go.
I was gonna say, was there ever a plan for the narrator to like reach Salmon even for like a brief postscript or something, or was it always like no?
So actually, the first draft of the book that I completely scrapped, he gets to Salmon by like page 10. And he ends up living at like he's really excited about being a school teacher, and the school was like this decrepit building, and he's like forced to live on the roof, and he like sleeps out on the roof, and he teaches these kids who hate him. And then but the thing is, so I liked the premise and it was fun, but it had no narrative momentum. Like I got to like page 60 and I just kept inventing scenes without any, you know, idea of where to go next. And so I said, what's wrong? And then I realized, oh, the problem is he should never arrive at this place. And so then I rewrote it with that in mind, and it came out much better.
Raise your
I
hand.
feel like
Oh,
I just
wait.
want to. I feel like a cool thing about that is like you don't let yourself get bored with it. Like it seems like each time, almost every scene, you could like spend a lot more time in it. But you'll often just end it very quickly. Be like, oh, whatever. No, I mean, forget about like this big can of worms we just opened. Moving on. Which is like I think keeps it funny and exciting. That's all I had to say.
I wanted to say, raise your hand if you would be tempted to accept a government grant to go and live in Salmon, on Salmon. Oh, everyone except Christian would go. Wow.
Kristen's like,
Oh,
absolutely not.
Crook actually did go, he says.
He's there now.
Imagine if we all went without Kristen. That'd be
She'd
awful.
be like, see ya, suckers.
You would need somebody to write a letter home to, so you would receive all of our letters.
Why would you go? Anyone? Maybe that's another conversation for another time. You are, Yvonne?
I'm going to Taiwan next year where I will do research, but probably just not do that and hang out. So yeah.
Oh shit, that's gonna be late nights for book club. Or maybe early mornings. No, it's not. Yeah, okay. We're not I don't know what we're gonna do. Oh yeah, so shall we, anybody else have anything else they want to say about the first part of the book?
Yeah, I want to say how much I enjoyed the part that's illustrated on the front with the strong folds. That was one of my favorite parts in the book.
Thank you. I'm particularly happy that that Kit decided to use that as the image for the cover, because he when he asked me what do you want on the cover, I said whatever, you know, whatever you feel is best. So yeah.
The parents are really like funny characters. The line where it says like my father or my mother was a secretary, I think it's my father a secretary, my mother a secretary, always makes me laugh. It's just like, why would you put it like that?
And when he tells about his like the girl that the parents had before him, and then that he had to leave the whole room like that, that was also like tragically funny.
I also really loved the bit on the boat where he's talking with Sebastian. He's like trying to pass himself off as like being exclusively a poet, like, and then Sebastian's like really quite proud of his work as like a stock boy in a liquor store. I'm like, oh, that's like, of like, that's such a, that's a real life right there. It's so good.
So thank you. So I think somebody mentioned whether or not this book was based on real life. The only autobiographical detail is that I used to be a stock boy at a liquor store, and my bosses treated me like a child, and it felt very infantilizing. And I made like $10 an hour off the books. Yeah.
I really like the bit where he gets the bottle of wine from his boss, and then he's like, "I'll cherish it," and then he just walks out and throws it in the air. Um, yeah, you really know then that like this is a special guy.
I also enjoyed, there's a paragraph on page 20 to 21. And I don't know, it's about like the sort of satchel shenanigans, but I think it has a very nice observation about just kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of commonly observed that like people don't really listen when you're telling them stuff, but I feel the way that is expressed in this paragraph is very memorable, and I'll remember it for a long time. And then on the flip side, I love the whole like, if you go to Salmon, they will fuck you to death or something things. Like, and then I also read the Shabby Doll interview about that part and where that roots from, and I was actually laughing out loud when I was reading about this. So very enjoyable.
Thank you. I'm glad that I could make this stupid joke between my friends when we were teenagers live on in literature.
So I haven't heard that interview yet, so I don't know where this comes from. And you can now decide to tell me or not. I don't mind either way.
I'll put the link for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Top secret information.
I'll copy this and listen to it right now. No, I wanted to ask, or like just state the chapter is called "The Importance of My Satchel," and then the satchel story really reminded me of importance of being earnest. How Jack, I think, is found in a bag. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this is really the narrator who has read all these 19th century books and is now trying to cast his own story in the same vein as the 19th century literature that he's read. And as we've also talked about Oscar Wilde in this group a lot, that's what came to mind. Yeah. I don't even need confirmation if that was intentional or not. I just wanted to say that.
I think it's a beautiful interpretation.
Thank you.
One thing that makes me really happy is that like you said that The Descent of Alette, which we read, like had an influence on this book, and also that Waiting for Godot had an influence on it. And I like love that we read those books in the book club and that we like, talked about them together, and then they find their ways into the project. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think you can make the argument that this book wouldn't exist without the book club in many ways.
Wow.
What was the first one? So you said Waiting for Godot, and what was the other one?
The Descent of Alette by Alice Notley.
Oh, okay. I wasn't in the club when we read that, I think.
I would recommend it to you. All right, we've already been here an hour and we haven't got to the play yet, so we should read it.
And maybe in the spirit of video games, we should speed run the second second part. And I thought that it's the shortest of the scenes on the island. I thought it'd be fun to do the last one when they emerge from their mushroom reverie, and we get to the very end. And so I can do the stage voice, I suppose, including the things. I don't know if there's anything in parentheses. And then there's 4 characters. There's the driver, Golden Boy, Sebastian, and the poet.
Is this Island 8?
Island 8, yeah. So who wants to be who?
I think Crook should be Golden Boy.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to be Sebastian, but that's fair.
Oh, okay, then I think you should be Sebastian.
Oh no. Not even the first. I'm like not even the first person to read.
No, I'm gonna spotlight them too once they're cast.
Okay, okay.
Who wants to be the driver?
I'll be driver.
Okay, now we have the 2 stars of the show.
What
Steven, your
else?
voice
Who
seemed to
else
get
is there?
There's Sebastian and the poet, main character.
Oh, who's gonna take on the main character? What about
Oh,
Victor?
sorry, cookies. Yeah, you're right. I missed that. Yeah.
Wow, we have a bit of a
Lucy, as the
all-male
publisher of this
cast.
book, I give you executive power to select from the audience and cast the characters.
I think Victor would be a great poet.
Fine.
I've always said that. And the last one is Golden Boy?
No, we have Golden Boy. That's Steven.
No,
Oh
Steven
no,
Sebastian.
Steven Sebastian. Sorry.
Golden Boy should be a girl.
I agree.
Any girls want to read? Leonor, I think you'd make a great Golden Boy.
I can read Golden Boy, all right.
Okay, let me spotlight you. Oh, and I also should I spotlight Sebastian, or should you just be sort of like omniscient?
Yeah, I think I'll be omniscient. Yeah, that sounds better.
All right.
All right, so here we are, Island 8 from Salmon. During their reverie, Poet and Sebastian have vanished and reappeared throughout various parts of the island. Unbeknownst to them, they have strangled Leather and Elector of Salmon to death. Alphonse escaped Leather's house and has since wandered the island. He now rests at the beach, staring off into the horizon. Sebastian and Poet have just reappeared next to him on the edge of the water. Several hours have passed. It is dawn. Next to them, Golden Boy is fishing with his father. They both use ludicrously large fishing poles.
I don't know what the voice is. Here they are.
Are they back to normal?
We can hope.
Normal?
You don't remember?
No.
Throughout the night, your eyes were white, total blanks, both of you carrying things. The statues from Leathers. You were throwing them into the ocean. Someone tried stopping you. Metallurgist without flute, I think, but you nearly beat him to death. We had to bring him to the island nurse.
One of you kept vanishing and the other would drag a statue on the ground and then that one would vanish. Then the first one would reappear and commence the dragging. And then the second one would reappear and you'd have an easier time of it. I thought of helping you even, but I didn't want to get involved. You threw our founder in the ocean, deposited him there.
Good on you, son. Don't get involved with these non-islanders. No offense, lads. I never cared much for our founder to start with, really. We have a peaceful life here without him.
Yes, none taken.
None taken at all. I don't remember anything.
Not a drop of memory. I am tired.
Extremely tired and hungry.
Driver takes out a loaf of German Schwarzbrot. Am I pronouncing that correctly? For Schwarzbrot. Okay. He takes out a loaf of German bread from his rucksack.
Not this stately German black bread.
Oh, but much improved.
I'll take it.
All have a chew. Sebastian transforms into a tiger.
Oh.
Wait a tick. He's transformed into some kind of blasted cat thing.
Sebastian transforms back into Sebastian, normal version.
What's happening to me?
We must find a way to control the mushroom's hold on us. Yes, that's it. Control it.
I don't know how.
Think about transforming into a tiger again.
Maybe it's like meditation. Ground yourself. Focus on all your zones.
I'm not sure that's right.
I swear to you, they put those instructions in a book.
Sebastian transforms into a tiger again. He cleans himself. Poet vanishes. He reappears a few feet away at the top of a palm tree. He climbs down and returns to the shore. Golden Boy and Driver have been looking at Sebastian Tiger silently. Alphonse seems unbothered by the confusion. Sebastian returns to normal once more.
Have you been caring for our Alphonse?
I quite like him, it's true. Can we keep him, Father?
Certainly. A stout pig, with a comely dignity, I'd add.
No complaints from us. You have our blessing.
Sebastian vanishes again. He reappears. He turns into a tiger and runs away. We do not hear from him again.
Well, I'll be going now.
Where to, friend?
I wanted to go to Salmon, but that was impossible. No, that's not possible for me any longer, and I have no reason to return home, it's true. Moreover, I cannot. For all that awaits me there is a life that is one day long. No tomorrows, more of the same today. My parents are likely dead, at the very least moribund. Moribund? But I shall indeed be the author of my own life. With fungal assistance, I will embrace a certain atavist disposition, I believe. I cannot go to Salmon, so I am going to become a fish. Goodbye, Alphonse.
The pig oinks. Poet walks into the ocean. He becomes a fish, swims away. The sun once again offers its apology down to the earth. Driver and Golden Boy cast their lines back into the water. The end. Thank you all. Wonderful performance. I'm sorry for how I pronounce Sherman Schwarzbrot.
Sherman.
Sherman and Schwarzbart.
I liked how Victor moved at the end when he was reading that he could never go to seven. There was an acceptance in your voice that just really moved me.
Oh, you have some. Whoa.
It's not even properly Schwarz, but yeah, have
Yeah, it
some.
doesn't
This
look
is
so Schwarz.
my offer for you for writing this cool book for us.
I love it. It's from 1688.
Yeah, it's still holding up good, right? So no mold, no fungus yet.
It would be fun to do like an actual production of this book, although I don't know how you would deal with the first half. Like,
Or turning into a tiger.
Actually, I wanted to say, Sebastian, I had like while I was reading this, I would like read like a few chapters or sections like every day for the course of a week or something, and I must have like almost every night I dreamt about like how I would like imagining, especially in the play half, I dreamt about the disappearing and reappearing object, especially the hat. I was like my brain was really like designing like mechanical ways to solve this problem of like how to stage it, and I had all this stuff about like having the backdrop all be totally black and have people dressed also in complete black sort of run around and just like pick up the hat and like swallow it while someone else puts it on someone else's. So yeah, this lit up my brain.
I'm really pleased to hear that. I guess you could do it with spotlights if the background was totally black, right? And the spotlight could go out on a character, then the actor would run somewhere else, and then it would appear. Yeah, it would. I think it would prove logistically difficult. But it's funny. Speaking of dreams, that concept came to me from a dream. I know that sounds very precious, but I had a dream that I was at a party and people had this very weird kind of absinthe where if you were take a sip, it would make you disappear and then you would reappear somewhere else. And everyone was sort of like laughing in the dream, like this is so much fun. And then somebody handed me the bottle and I said, I can't do it because if I drink it, I'm going to disappear for good. And everyone started berating me. It's like, Sebastian, you're such a wuss. Just do it. Everybody's doing it. And that's the end of the dream. And then months later, I started writing this and I was like, oh yeah, I think this is inspired from that dream I had. So yeah.
Raise your hand if you would take the mushrooms from the island. Some people are like, at first, like, no, and then like, well, why not? Wow. Um, maybe it could be like an animation. The instead of a play, could be like the Disney Pixar version. How did you come up with the ending where he becomes a fish?
I knew I had that in mind from the beginning. I knew that by the end he had to become a fish. And then for a while I kind of struggled of like, how am I going to show that? And then I realized the easiest way is to write he becomes a fish. And that's it. No other explanation, no detail. And yeah.
Was
I
that
like it.
from the earliest drafts? Or was that
Mhm.
a second draft? Oh,
No,
yeah.
that was from the early draft. Yeah, I knew that he had to become a fish eventually.
It seems like the logical conclusion.
Yeah, I agree.
Although it's like, if there was a sequel, would he become a person again?
I like that you don't say what fish he becomes, because like the logical thing is like, oh, he became a salmon at the end, but he's just a fish, you know.
Yeah, well, salmon are they're freshwater fish, right? So I don't think if he did that, it would be suicide. Which maybe that's what he
That'd
wants.
be pretty good. Yeah.
I figured he was committing suicide anyway because the two guys were
Yeah.
fishing. I figured he was like ready. He's like, I see them fishing. Let me just.
Don't salmon live in the ocean too? They like
I don't
go
know.
Yeah.
there and then they swim into the fresh water to mate and then go back to the ocean.
No, I think they never go back. I think they just die at the end of the river.
Oh, yeah, okay.
For
Dang.
someone who's written a book with the title, I have a profound ignorance about the lives of salmon. I don't know anything about them, man. Sorry.
Have you ever seen one of those ladders that they like jump on?
Yeah, they're pretty great. And don't they
Mm.
have cannons too? I feel like we talked
Yeah.
about the fish cannons in book
Yeah.
club.
Didn't
We
say
always
Yeah,
talk
like
about
anything
that.
cannon.
about this
Yeah,
at
yeah.
some point, about the fish cannons.
Mm.
I
We
was
should.
living in Kansas at the time, so it was a couple years ago.
Everybody remembers where they were when we talked about fish cannons in book club. Maybe we should do a reading like at a fish ladder one day, because you know that
There's
the
a nice
people there would be into it. So we've kind of just gone through the whole book. We only read like 2 or 3 parts, but now we're at the end. So I guess I would like to know how did you feel at the end of the book when you finished reading? Were you satisfied with him becoming a fish? This is not to Sebastian, this is to others.
I'd forgotten he became a fish, to be honest. That'd be
Chris, that was the whole point. It was the only thing Sebastian wanted from the start.
I feel like this is like more what I brought to this, but the ending reminded me of a lot of late imperial Chinese drama and fiction, in that people always like end up becoming monks and disappearing from like the mundane world, and there's always like transformation. Sometimes they go and become like Taoist priests, and then you come across them fishing, which is very like specifically what I was like, oh look, they're fishing at the end. So I just thought that that was kind of a funny resonance, although I don't imagine it was really part of the gestation process. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read any of that, but a few months, this is after I finished the book. A few months ago, I read I think I might have it here. It's Japanese ghost stories by compiled by this guy Lafcadio O'Hearn, who was an Irish guy who moved to Japan and lived there for the rest of his life in the 19th century. And I would imagine a lot of Japanese folk tales probably influenced by Chinese literature. And so in that book, like there's at least 4 stories where like somebody transforms into an animal at the end. And so I thought that was a really funny coincidence.
I've actually read that too. What were the Japanese folktales?
Sorry?
Was it the Japanese folktales?
Yeah, I think it was called Japanese Ghost Stories, something like, let me see if I have it here. I can't find it, but yeah, it's by the guy's name is Lafcadio Hearn, which I think is a really
Yeah.
cool name.
I think it was half Greek, half English or something like that. Or was he Irish? I'm not perfectly sure.
Yeah, I think he was Irish, but I don't know. Yeah.
That sounds extremely made up. That sounds like I'm knowing nothing about him. I'm gonna say with 90% certainty that's like some Irish or English person pretending to be Irish for like some reason of like mysticism or something. 100%.
But I've read the books as well, and my professor in Leipzig told us about him too. So if he's made it up, he actually convinced everybody. I can, but next time I'm at my family's place, I can take some pictures for all of those who are interested in these fairy tales from the book, because they're really nicely illustrated and they have a like a playable or like some Japanese game thing in the end that you can actually play with dice and things. So that looked really cool. I like when a book comes with a gimmick.
Nice. Sebastian, you told me that when the book first came out a few weeks ago and like people were reading it, like, you know, the first people to read it, you were like, they all think the island that they're on is salmon.
Yeah, everybody, or at least a few people do that. They go like, "Oh, the island is called Salmon." I've specifically said the island is not called Salmon. Read the book carefully.
Oh, that was really funny. Um, yeah. So I guess this book, one thing that like when we were describing it, you know, like when people hadn't read it and I was trying to describe it to people, I kept saying like, oh, it's not like other things that people are writing now or that people are publishing now. You know, it feels like you know, it's not like the like urgent tell-all memoir that about identity or whatever that like most books are. And um uh like I like that. Did you guys like did it feel different to other stuff you've read recently or I don't know.
Urgent tell-all novel about how you can never get to salmon. Don't even try.
Yeah, the voice of a generation.
It's an urgent tell-all novel about an island and another island that you don't actually go to, but there is an island if you're looking for, but it's not the one that's in the title of the book, in case you're wondering.
And there's a reason why it's in all caps. It's an aesthetic choice. Um yeah, but um I feel like when you know like when I first read it and we were talking about publishing and stuff, like I definitely said to Sebastian like, is there like a message? Are we supposed to learn something? Like, you know, and he was just like, no. I'm like, no, not really. You know, because I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm just expecting that we're supposed to be taking something away from this that's like, you know, to like better us in some way. But
I
as I
think the
understand
message
it, it's
is
just
like
for our
you
entertainment.
just gotta relax. You know, you just gotta
Yeah.
vibe. Just gotta enjoy life.
Like a salmon floating
And never
upstream.
and never write a poem for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like on just like on a it feels like the kind of thing where you were I don't know if you did this at all, but it feels like, you know, you I can imagine that you'd like write one section and then like show it to someone and then that person would laugh and you'd be like, all right, I'll write another one. You know, like it's just like on a like sentence level, it's just like funny all the time. Like, so yeah, even though I mean, or like especially because maybe because I don't think we're supposed to like be learning some kind of moral thing. it's just like, oh, this is a really nice treat.
Yeah, that pleases me. I'm I'm glad to be. This is a very nice tree of literature. I also just remembered I forgot to use this. I mentioned this in the group chat. I went out and bought this today. I wanted to buy a prop gag anytime somebody maybe described you know, a particularly tumultuous chapter, you know, I could go. But now it's the end of the meeting and I forgot about it.
Wow, you've really come through with all the props then. We'll put them in a museum one day. Anybody have anything else they want to say about Salmon by Sebastian Castillo?
One thing I really enjoyed about the play section was how often in books where there's lots of like dialogue, the author and the reader are both forced to sort of grapple with a bunch of like adverbs as to how the person said the thing that they're saying. And this just is like, here's the name and here's the like what they said, which is just because I never need another adverb as long as I've lived, and that is like so good.
Yeah, when I
Yeah.
was reading it, I realized playwrights really, yeah, they got it easy. Nobody ever proffers seriously, you know. You just you just write the line.
I like what Victor said in the chat that his favorite stage direction was embarrassed he has a
Yeah.
son.
It's funny. It's tough though. Like, I don't know. That seems like a hard switch to make, like the like internal monologue thing versus like the people talking to each other. Like it's like, I don't know. It's like a fun challenge, but
I would imagine that, like, for an actual playwright, it's probably difficult. Like, you know, how people actually speak is very different from how characters
yeah.
talk, and so like you want to be able to deliver a line that an actor could perform convincingly and not have to like rewrite, you know. So and yeah, that, you know, obviously in the second section it's very like high, like goofball comedy, so it was never meant to be performed, I suppose. I guess
As you're just saying this, I'm reminded of Mark 610 or whatever his name was.
Mark Crawford 610.
Yes, thank you.
609.
And you seemed like a bit frustrated by him not pronouncing like some easy words correctly. But I think that actually is the perfect delivery for a poet.
probably right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess more than anything, I was just a little upset that I paid him $150 and it sounded like he didn't rehearse it a single fucking time or read the thing before recording himself doing it. And it's like, come on, man, that's good money for 5 minutes of work. I guess the last thing I want to say is that I'm very honored to have all of you as readers of this book. So thank you very much for coming and for saying all the kind things you said today. I really appreciate it.
You can probably expect that in 2 to 3 years' time, someone here will write a book inspired by salmon, and we'll get to talk about it.
I can't wait.
We'll be like, oh yeah, this reminds me of Salmon by Sebastian. The video game likeness. Does anybody else want to write like an absurd, picaresque? I think some of you could try it.
I think it's very fun to do. I encourage you to write a goofy picaresque.
It did definitely make me or like remind me that you could like write something longish and have it not just be like a slog, you know, like that it could like as a writer, I mean, like that it could be. I'm sure there was like, you know, parts that were like having to rewrite or like, you know, figure stuff out, but like that it seemed on the whole that you were enjoying writing it, which is always like a pleasure as a reader, I think.
Sort of picaresque your interest.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the risk of sounding somewhat grumpy, there's so many books that are like rushing to be described as like urgent or important, and like it seems like we just are having a mostly like fun time writing this book, and I like seeing that.
Yeah, I feel like the word permission was said about like 80 times during my MFA, but I don't know, it's just cool that this exists. I'm happy. This is like the kind of book I'd rather read. I don't know. more enjoyable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do suppose that yeah, when you sort of sit down and set the bar for yourself as like this needs to be timely and urgent and like speaks to the moment and X, Y, and Z thing, it's like, you know, you're putting so much pressure on yourself. And it's not that people can't write books like that aren't really good and actually live up to those descriptions, but I guess there is something to be said for when your intention is to write something kind of light and comedic, you know, to use your word, permission. Yeah, it gives you a lot of permission, and it ends up being really fun. So you know, yeah.
I also think like it's cool because the whole time everybody in talking about this, like it's like, oh, I can see all of these references and influences and stuff. And it's a book that has required like you can see that you're like very that you're a very well read writer in the book. Like it's not like it's like so much goes into it, you know, to like kind of come out with this funny story about this little guy. Like you can't just, I mean, I don't know. It feels like you're like if you were like a musician or something, like you're classically trained, but then you like write this like weird like I don't know, like I don't know, experimental pop album or something. Um and it's just like cool, I think, to see like, oh, this is what you're doing with all of your skill and like knowledge. That being said, I've read another book by Sebastian, which is an urgent tell-all memoir about his family. So he can do it all.
Well, I suppose. Thanks, everyone. I think we're almost at an hour and a half, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I had a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for reading the book. Pass on your copies to people who you know, who you think will like them, but make sure that they give them back. Write your name in the inside cover. um, and one thing,
Limited edition.
one last thing I would like to say is, um, I feel like this is the kind of book where like there's all these funny lines and characters and like just like little moments that are really hilarious, and it does feel like the kind of thing that is improved by like talking about it with your friends and like laughing, like, oh yeah, like we all know Alphonse, or we all know that bit where they're stuck in the wine keg, or like, you know, the funny scene with the clowns and the mushrooms and everything. And I feel like it's like one of those, to me it feels like one of those things that if you watch like the same comedy show like multiple times or whatever, like that they become like stronger images or like funnier jokes, like because you talk about them with other people or because you like relive them. Like I found like because I read the book so many times, like it got funnier every time that I look back on it. And now I can just like look at any part and I'm just like, oh yeah, like I know. Like it just kind of makes me laugh. So yeah, you've read it, but like go back and read it again and think about it and I don't know, share those little parts with people. Yeah, it's basically that. Yeah, you should make TikToks about Alphonse. Um, Oh, Carmen said the most fun I've had reading a book in a while. That's really nice.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that.
I wonder
Anything
what
else anybody did
would
want to say?
happen if you rewrote the urgent tell-all novel as all the characters were fish.
Like finding
That's my next project.
All right. I don't.
The last question I have is, I'm sure we're probably going to take a break with the book club for a little bit, but do we have any idea what we're doing when we come back?
Oh, I forgot about that. Forgot I needed to say that at the end.
Reading
Yeah. So
Madeline.
as is tradition, this is our wait. We started in 2020. Wow, we've been going so long, like 3 years. Um, we will take the summer off. I think we should read something all together, like something that's about poetry probably, but that's like prose, that's long. That's the usual thing to do in the summer. But I don't have any ideas, but maybe we can do a poem. Because yeah, I would like to come back in September and talk about that with everyone. And then yeah, I was thinking I basically in the summer I usually think about what will we do next. So that's my plan. But yeah, if anybody has any suggestions for like something that you think we should all read, then let us know. You can say in the I guess I'll do the thing where we make suggestions and we'll have a poll. You think that's best? Um, and if not many people vote, then it'll be really easy to manipulate the poll so that your choice wins. Yeah. But does that sound good to everyone? Okay, well, I hope you all have a really good summer. Thank you for supporting Shabby Dollhouse and the books. And
Thank you again so much for reading.
yeah, we'll be in the group chat. So if anybody has anything to say, let us know. And you know, hope to see you all soon. All right, bye guys.
Thanks, Sebastian. Thanks,
Happy
Lucy.
summer.
Bye. Thanks,
Thank
Sebastian
you.
and Lucy.
See you soon. Good job, Sebastian.
Thanks. I guess this is really the sort of, this feels like the end of the line, right? This is like the last or at least I don't have anything planned, the last salmon event. Yeah.
Yeah, but we can do more.
Probably
Well, I
will.
mean, it feels fitting for it to be the
Mm.
final one, right? Like after so many months of preparation and planning and emails and back and forth, it sort of feels like this was what it was meant for, right? To sort of
Oh,
spend some
that's
time
nice.
with friends and talk about something you've written, and it's a really special feeling.
Yeah, it
Virtual
is.
ending. Would you say you wrote it for book club?
I wrote it I literally just wrote this so that we
For this meeting.
Yeah, it's nice. I feel like it's in a way it's like frustrating because you're like, oh my God, there's so many other things we could talk about, but you can only talk
a
about
lot.
whatever comes up in an hour and a half or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I didn't want to take up too much of people's time since we were already.
Yeah.
But it felt like
Yeah,
a good conversation. Like it never felt like the conversation lagged or anything like that.
No, actually, when it started off like really easy from the beginning, often there's like a warming up period where no one speaks,
Right.
but people got involved straight away. I think it was thanks to Mark Crawford that they felt comfortable.
Yeah, he really loosened everybody up. I think it was well worth the money.
We'll use that for something. We should have that somewhere online, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think I have it right now as like privately listed. I can make it public so that anybody can watch it.
Yeah, to be honest, we should do that because like it's just a reading, for people who
Right.
are interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you figured out if you're gonna go to, you said you were gonna come to Europe? Are you still thinking about that?
Yeah, my dad is being a little he's being like typical where he's like, yeah, like it's definitely gonna happen, but I have no concrete details, but like by
Yeah.
next week I'll know. And then when I talk to him, he's like, well, not yet, but by next week. So I do think that since it's already the end of June, I'm gonna talk to him this week and figure out like for real what's happening. Because I would like to go. And flights have been sort of steadily around 900 to $1,000, which is more obviously than I'd like to pay, but at least they're not like crazy. They're not like $2,000, so I could still make it work. I would, if I did go, I would probably spend most of my time in Spain.
Yeah.
But I was planning to be there for like 10 days, between somewhere between July and August. Yeah, but of course I'll let you know.
Yeah. Do let us know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting pretty close to when you would be going, I guess.
At like about a month, yeah.
Yeah. We have like maybe probably like early August. We have sort of like we don't really know what we're doing. Like we're plant sitting for my parents in Paris for most of July, but after that we kind of have a bit of a hole, so potentially.
Oh yeah, I remember that last time we spoke, you were thinking of maybe coming back to the States, right?
We are still doing that. We just have not made any concrete steps.
Is it for Rochelle's wedding that you're coming back?
Sort of, yeah. That's the official reason, but that's in late September. So we're thinking of coming like more like mid-August. So we'll probably be there for like a span of time.
And we were saying with Caroline, or I was saying with Caroline, we should do another reading around the time of the wedding. Like maybe go to close to Buffalo or somewhere else around there.
Right.
So we haven't figured out anything else yet. I also want to do one on Cape Cod
Oh, right.
in the town where
No,
we.
I haven't been there in like 15 years, but I loved it the last time I was there. So if you are
Oh,
there, I would love to try to arrange a brief visit.
yeah, you
I
should
just
definitely
realize
come.
I'm still recording. Let me stop.